Okay, let's join our hands. Take a deep breath. Let's start with Manglacharan. Traikalyam dravya shatkam navapada saitam jiva shatkaya lesha panchanye chastikaya vrata samiti gati jnana charitra bheda ittetan moksha moolam tribhuvana mahitaiha proktamarhadvirishaiha प्रत्येति श्रद्धधाति स्पृशति च मतिमान यः स वै शुद्धदृष्टि मोक्षमार्गस्य नेतारं भेतारं कर्मभूभृतां ज्ञातारं विश्वतत्त्वानां वन्दे तद्गुणलब्धये. I'm going to take a small recap from our last class. So sharing the screen now. On this particular slide, when we were talking about how the molecules are formed, right, by aggregation division, then I think Mahavir's iPad, he asked the question, which was the fusion and the fission reactions. So I finally figured out that it's the fission reaction which releases lesser amount of energy as compared to the amount of energy that is released by the fusion reaction. So fusion reaction is by the aggregation of the atoms or existing clusters of molecules, which creates huge amount of energy. And it is actually the fusion reaction which is very similar to the process that takes place when the Aryantas turn into getting rid of or expanding their whole being out of their whole consciousness out to the vastness of the universal space. And when they contract back their whole energy back into their body, that's the time when the remaining 4 karma particles start getting rearranged back into its form so that they can get finished finally, and then they turn into siddha. So the fusion reaction is of much higher energy, and probably so the hydrogen bomb, which is higher energy, is the fusion reaction. The fission reaction is creating a little lesser amount of energy compared to fusion reaction, and fission reaction is by the division of the clusters of molecules. So actually, I would call it a combination, like a combination of aggregation and division, because in the fission, what happens is, even to split apart that uranium, they need to send one neutron towards it, and that neutron makes this uranium unstable, and that's when it starts dividing itself. So probably it's like aggregation and division combined, that is actually the fission reaction. But the energy which is produced in the fission reaction is by the division of the clusters of existing molecules. And the same process is applied when our acharyas do deep meditation, and therefore major destructive kind of karmas get disintegrated. The origin of this matter form of the karma itself completely disintegrates, so nothing remains out there, which is the 4 karmas I told you the other day. So that was a little more clarity on this subject. Thank you so much for asking me that question in the last class. If anything further that needs to be discussed, I'm absolutely open to discuss. But before that, let's go to the concepts that we did last time, which was eternity. We understood that the moment is to understand one moment, it is like one atom when moves from one space unit to the next adjacent space unit is one moment. But then the same amount of time, which is one moment, is also taken by that atom to move from entire expanse of the universal space, from one point to the extremely other end of the universal space. And that it moves it with such a fast speed that that moment is also known as a moment. So a moment can comprise of many moments inside it. So that was the thing that we understood from this phenomenon of eternity. Now comes my new slide for today, and we have just 3 slides to go, and after that I will be taking up some of your questions. Okay, amusing nature of properties of a substance. Listen to this. This is amazing. Like, look how minute vision of our acharyas is. Okay, what did acharyas tell us? That any substance, right? It's got two things. What are the two things it has? It has the properties, right? What are the properties? The properties of this matter object is the color, taste, smell, and touch. These are the four properties in this. So it has properties, and then what does it has? It has forms that it constantly changes. Like for example, before maybe it was just some chemical compound which was reformulated into the body of a plastic pen, and now it will go back into the form of another chemical molecular structure, which would be whatever function would it serve as a plastic in some other form. So these forms are an existent part of this pen, and the properties is an existent part of this pen. So we understood that it's made out of two things: properties and its states or different forms that it completely goes into. We also understood that the properties are always constant, which means that the properties are eternal. They never die off. They would always remain. It doesn't matter which form this pen takes. So the body of this pen takes. So when it was in the form of melted plastic, it also had the four properties, but some other types of properties. When it was reformulated into the pen, it has four new types of properties. And when it disintegrates and go back into its metal or some other form which is used for the plastic body of something else, it has got another property, right? But no matter what, the properties, which are the four properties, remain intact, which is color, taste, smell, and touch. They will always have that property. So from practical viewpoint, we can say that the pen is temporary because it will change its state. But from absolute point of view, we can say that the pen is permanent because no matter what, its properties would always remain in whichever form it transforms into. So this was the subject we took a few slides back. Now look, what are the properties? Now acharyas are saying that, have you ever questioned what a property itself might be? What is this property made out of? Very interesting. Look at what the concept is. What is the amusing nature of properties of a substance? The property stays inside any substance, right? The properties are inside this. My properties are inside my consciousness. The properties of my body is inside my body. So the properties remain inside the substance, correct? How can but however, the properties are without any properties. Does that make sense? Let me repeat it. The properties themselves are without any properties. Isn't that very clear? Because when this pen was in the form of melted plastic, what were the properties of that melted plastic? Some other color, some other taste, some other smell to it, correct? And now when this object formed, which is like the body of a pen, it also has the properties, but the properties change its nature. Now the properties are in the form of orange color and cylindrical body form, a touch which is like hard touch to it and coldness to it. So the properties changed. And now when it gets destroyed, then again its properties, different properties come into existence for that another transformation, correct? So how come the properties are constantly existent in them? No matter what, they will always have properties, but the nature of these properties keeps on changing. Do you get that? The properties themselves are without any properties. For example, Anusha, can I have my board, please, to make it to draw it? So, for example, this pen has its own properties, right? So the properties itself are blank. Look, the properties itself is completely blank. So imagine this is the pen, okay, and pen or pencil. Now, this pen or pencil retains its four properties, right? So the properties are distributed in the entirety of this object. We have already learned that. That means that properties are inside all of it, right? So imagine like points like this. It's not really these points, but just I'm using it as an example. Imagine this is like the properties, and these properties are distributed evenly in the whole pen. But this property, imagine this property to be a big square here. Okay, this property is blank in itself. It is completely blank, but it retains the property of whatsoever quality that comes into it. So, for example, the saltiness is the property of salt, correct? Like if you have salt, it has the property of saltiness. Okay, so but when you suppose when the salt gets mixed up into a huge amount of sugar, the saltiness leaves its property and a new taste develops into the new subject. What happened to the saltiness, right? So the property was blank by itself. When the salt had this property, the property turned into saltiness. But when the salt left the property and the sugar entered into this property, because it was more higher intensity and a higher viscosity, what we say, like higher charge it had, this whole substance turned into a taste which was sugary, but a mild taste of something in it, right? So this property actually develops a third property, which is C. So A was the property of saltiness. Then B was added to it. What got created was C, a totally different taste. You get that? So and you would see that it actually happens when you mix milk with milk with curd. I think the property, it's like a third substance that gets created, and that is known as the yogurt. So it's like a taste which is not even of the original yogurt, and the taste is not even of the original milk. A third taste gets developed. So it's like totally in this chemical reaction, only totally a third substance gets created. Now this third substance is getting created, though it is created from the transformations of A and B, but this substance itself has got its own properties. And then this property, which was inside the substance which was transforming, now retains the property of the substance C. Does that make sense? Do you get it, or do you need more examples? Give me a thumbs up if you understand this. Otherwise, I'll move forward. Hiti, I cannot see you. Arushi, give me a thumbs up. Okay, you get it. So I'm just going to repeat to understand it. The property of saltiness does not exist without the salt, because that transformation of the substance was in the form of salt. That is why the property retained itself as saltiness. So saltiness is the attribute of the salt, but the property that contained the saltiness, the property that contained the saltiness in it, itself doesn't have any special attribute. Itself is blank in nature. There is nothing. That's why every single time this pen transforms into something else, there's a new property existing. Before that, there's a new property existing in it. Right? Well, how can that possible? The pen should retain its property of the purple color all the time, right? But that doesn't happen. When you mix up this or melt this out, what happens? Totally a different thing created, and maybe a color which you can't even resemble from the chart of the colors. So it's new properties that come in, but the property remains intact in the substance. It's constant, but that property now retains the color or the taste or the smell of whatever the product or the object is getting transformed into. This is a very interesting concept, and probably when you grow old and one of you turn into a scientist, trust me, you will use this information like anything with such accuracy that you will be able to understand such depth the properties of this matter and the energy world that scientists are talking about today. Okay, so the properties help differentiating the various substances, right? So what's this properties doing? They always help us differentiate. For example, you'll say, because of the property retained in this pen is purple, so I can say that this is a purple pen. And now later on the same body turns into an orange. It helps you identify that the property is an orange color, so you would say it is an orange pen. So these properties help you understand various substances, identify it. Clear? But now what is happening with these properties? Exactly what kind of properties are these? So these properties are of two kinds. One of them is simple or ordinary properties, which are present in all the substances, all the essentials. What does that mean? In the halls, in the motion, in the consciousness, in the matter, in the space, in the time. Every single of those essentials have got some common properties in it. Okay. And then the second type of the properties is unique properties. For example, my consciousness has a unique property of knowingness and perception. The matter cannot have that property. The matter has got its own unique property of touch, taste, smell, and color. The halt and motion has its own unique properties of making, helping, supporting motion or supporting halt. The space has its own unique property of providing accommodation. The time has its own unique property that it helps us understand the passing of the time from one moment to another moment. Correct? So these are unique properties of all the six essentials, but there are also certain properties which are common in all of them. What is it? For example, they all exist, right? So that's one property which is common in all the essentials. Another property is they all have some or the other kind of functions. Correct? So that's common property. They all have form. All of these properties have a form. So that's a common property. So that's how we differentiate that the properties are common properties, and there are certain properties which are unique properties, and there are infinite number of unique properties in every single essential right there. Okay, but we have understood just one main for to understand the specific function of these essentials. There are infinite number of properties within a substance. The properties are of two kinds, common and special properties, unique properties. We just learned that. Special properties are unique for each essential. For example, the motion property, motion essential, halt property of the halt essential, and vice versa. So I hope the concept of property is very, very clear to all of you, that there are infinite number of properties inside a substance or an essential, but they also have two types of properties. One is common properties, which is common to all the essentials, and one is unique properties, and these properties are specific only to that particular essential, and it cannot be found in any other essential. That's what the uniqueness is about. Okay, let's talk about transformation. I told you that this was the pen, and it was before in the form of melted plastic, now in the form of a body of a pen, and maybe now it turns into the body of another another toy object, right? So this is known as transformation. So what does transformation means? It means undergoing changes while retaining one of its own nature. What was its nature that it retained? That they all continued to have some or the other properties, right? And always having the four properties, because this was a matter essential. Let's take an example of my consciousness. For example, a meditation may transform my angry state into a forgiving state. Is that correct? Right? If I sit here and meditate, probably if I'm very, very angry about something and I choose to be quiet and calm and peaceful, then in that moment, my angry state gets transformed into my forgiveness state, that I'm ready to forgive anyone who comes in front of me because I was doing some meditation. Correct? So at the same time, what happened? That the transformation happened of my angry state into my forgiving state. This transformation happened. But how did I retain my nature? When I was angry, at that time, I had my knowingness and perception. And when I was in the forgiving state, at that time also, I had my knowingness and perception. I did not leave my properties or my nature. Correct? So this is what is transformation, that I remain constant in my properties, but my form changed from an angry state into a forgiving state. So we may say that the forgiveness began during the transformation, right? You may say that the angry state ended and the state of forgiveness began. So we may say that things have beginning and things have end, but we can say that only from the perspective of these forms. Every time a new form gets created, something is originating and then it's dying. But we cannot say that the substances themselves or the essentials themselves are temporary in nature. Why can't we say that? Because they would always continue to exist no matter what. So what that their form died and new form has retained? Same thing happens with us, right? What happens with us? When we die, this body ends, but do we end? No, we keep on continuing into another lifetime. Our body gets transformed into another form. We take up another body, maybe a syringe body, maybe a bird body, a heavenly body, right? But the soul continued in all of these. So soul remained permanent with its property of knowingness and perceiving, right? But transformations happen. That my form was before a human and then it converted into another form. So these transformations keep on happening. So we say that forgiveness, so we that's what we, there has been a very wrong concept about things, that even my little one fights with me all the time saying, you know what, the world has a beginning and there's gonna be one day when it's gonna die. But if you look at these concepts, which Gen scientists are saying, there was never a beginning because there was eternity, and there's never going to be an end because again there is eternity, right? That is another thing, that the planets may restructure themselves or reform themselves into some other forms, but it is the matter which is constructing itself into a different form, which means matter always existed and consciousness always existed. There was never a starting point for consciousness according to Jain science. And this goes in tune with the law of conservation of energy. They say, according to science today, modern, that energy can never be created, energy can never be destroyed, but it can only change or transform, it can change its form. Exactly same law applies to all these essentials and the universe which is created by these essentials, that they always existed. No one created, there was never a god who created it. We don't believe in that. That's why we are different from Hinduism, because Hindus believe that the god is that the god created the world. Many other religions believe that someone created the world, but Jain scientists don't believe that anyone created the world. It always existed. And that's why only transformations have been happening throughout eternity, since time unknown, it will keep on continuing. So the transformations in material tangible objects also have beginnings, right? We understand that. So the matter form of the earth may reconstruct itself, but where did the matter come from? It always existed, it is just taking another form. In our eyes, to our eyes, it may seem that the earth is getting birth or new sun is getting born or this is happening, that is happening, right? But that's not the truth. How would it construct itself without any raw material? The raw material always existed in the universal space, period. There was no origination. The soul always existed as a raw material into this world, and now in the form of raw material we have so many different kind of emotions with it. And then when we purify itself, that's when the soul continues to purify itself and finally turns into its purest state, just like a gold. What happens with the gold? Gold is found in the nature, which has to go through some process, which is like metallurgy process, in which they try to remove the alloys or the impurities from the gold. But in nature, in earth, the gold is found as a raw material, right? And then after it is completely totally purified, it turns into a finest metal, right? Gold, which never tarnishes. Did gold ever tarnishes? No, it never tarnishes. It becomes just the purest part of the gold. That's what the process of the soul is, that the soul existed in the nature in the form of its raw form, a raw material. And then it goes through this process through meditations, through tapasya, through diksha, goes through all these processes and finally turns into its purest form, and then it remains in its purest form till eternity. It doesn't end, and there was never a beginning of the soul. It always exists as raw material in this universe. So this concept needs to be understood from the scientific perspective. Transformations taking place in the motion, the halt, and the space essentials do not have a beginning. So there are three essentials who does not have a beginning, even in the in the terms of different forms. Like I told you that the matter has got transformations, which is material and tangible. You can see it, you can feel it, all these transformations happening everywhere, right? But with the motion, halt, and space, there was even their transformations or their forms never had a beginning. They just kept on rolling and changing themselves. Remember, I told you 6 points up, 6 points down. That vibration itself is known as the transformations of these essentials. They have been taking place since infinity or since eternity. That's the right word here. Okay, so that was all about the science. And this gratitude, let's have gratitude towards our Acharya Uma Swami and all the gurus who have transferred and made this knowledge so easy in our own language to understand. And so the chapters were based again on the Tattvartha Sutra. This was the 5th chapter. There are total 10 chapters in the Tattvartha Sutra, but the 5th chapter was what was talking about the non-physical entities and the physical entities. And this presentation is created by me. If you have any questions about it, please text me. That's my contact number. And let's move forward to our questions and answers. Okay, so we finished up everything regarding the 5th chapter. I hope your concepts are slightly clear, but if you get time, review these slides one more time. They're all available on YouTube, each by the section of the day as we did it. I think 7 or 8 classes. Go through them if you need to, and get some in-depth knowledge and study about these chapters. Okay. Do you have questions for this class right now first? No. Okay. Anyone has questions for this class right now that I finished up today? Anyone has questions? Please write down your question. Hiti, do you have a question? Your hand is raised, but I don't see you. Yes, beta, please ask. Unmute yourself and ask.
So in the list, it said only 3 of the essentials, but doesn't time not have a beginning and an end?
Yes, beta, time also doesn't have a beginning and an end, but we talked about time even like just one slide before this. That's why it was not included on this one. So yes, time is also eternal and it has been existing since eternity. Absolutely. Thanks for taking that up. But we just talked about in a very separate slide about it. That's why it was not included here. Just to mention that the 3 more essentials never had a beginning or an end, even in the form of transformations. That's what it meant. But you know what, actually what happens with the time? For example, we are living in the Pancham Kal, right? Is the 5th Kal. Do you know about this? The 5th era, right? So actually I understand probably it's because the 5th era, from practical standpoint, we can say that the time started because the 5th era started just after the or immediately after or just a few time before Mahavir Bhagwan's moksha. The 5th era started. So that's why we say that there's starting of the 5th era and then the 5th era is going to end. So from that perspective, the time has transformations which has a beginning and an end also, right? And from an absolute viewpoint, the time is eternal and it has been having transformations since eternity when we take into perspective that one small atom of the time. Correct? So it's both. You can apply it right here with the 2 answers here. Thank you for asking. Nice question. Who else? Raise your hand, please.
I have a question.
What's your question, Anusha? Just ask.
My question is, you know how like in the ocean, people, I don't know, do people throw away the garbage? Because you said that everything can be like reformed and it changed their property. You like
Right.
the pen, suppose someone throws that in the ocean. Why did they throw it in the ocean? Can't you just recycle it so that the recyclers can remake?
Anusha, you're coming from the standpoint of kindness and how to take care of the nature and eco-consciousness. So yes, you at any moment of time, you have a choice what step you want to take. But when it comes from the perspective of plastics, the plastics would always continue to be there, right, as molecular form or as the atomic structural form, right, how it is formed, and will keep on changing its form. Like, for example, before that, plastic was in the form of a plastic bottle, and now you throw it in the ocean. Now scientists have come to understand there's something known as microplastics, right? The little the plastics over millions of years, over millions, over thousands of years, or even hundreds of years, break apart into teeny mini particles of plastics, and it has got different properties, not as easily touchable or feelable as the, and you can't even really see it unless it's like a microscopic instrument. So it changed its property, but the plastic continued to remain there, some or the other form. Okay, you have a question, Vivan? What is it? Is it regarding the class or it's something else? I'm taking up the class right now.
Okay.
Arushi has a question. Please unmute yourself and ask.
Sort of like on Anusha's questions, when you said that everything takes a new form, what about the things that scientists have ruled that they will stay there for billions, millions of years and won't break down?
For example, plastics itself, right? Yes, so there are certain things which are not created by nature actually. If you see, the plastics themselves are man-made things. They were constructed through combination of certain chemicals like matter, objects, and chemicals, and finally it took a form which nature itself cannot decompose, right? It's still a matter, but now nature cannot decompose, and that's why such harmful things are creating a lot of damage to our environment, climate, and the world around us, the oceans, everything around us. And these are all man-made objects. If you actually notice closely, Arushi, I cannot see your face. If you notice it closely, you would see that anything which is natural and not man-made always decomposes, always have a way to transform itself. Just name anything, you will see that the world is constantly transforming. You see the trees transforming, you see the woods transforming, the waters transforming, the air transform, everything keeps on transforming, which is by nature. But man has become so smart and he thinks that he's so intelligent that he can create certain substances for just its own use, not even caring if the nature or the environment can really support that existence or not. But yes, they are also matter particles because they are constructed from the matter particles, and thus they also retain the four basic properties, which is color, taste, touch, and smell. Do you get that? Okay, who else? Put your thumbs up, please. Put your hands up. Yes, Mahavir's iPad. What is your name? Can you text me your name? Rishabh. Rishabh, I first thing I said before I started the class was answer your question. You were there, right? Did you listen to that, or do you want me to repeat? Okay, Rishabh, I immediately checked that out, that the fusion reaction creates more energy and fission reaction creates lesser energy. So the atom bombs are fission reaction and hydrogen bombs are fusion reactions. And I then completely explained how the four destructive karmas was getting destroyed with the help of the fission reaction, which is generating lesser energy, and the more amount of energy is required to destroy the undestructive karmas. And that's why the fusion reaction is later on required or helpful during the becoming of the Siddha, from the Arihant to the Siddh position. So yes, you were absolutely correct on that. And thanks for helping me out also, because then I was able to put that into limelight for everyone else here in the class.
Thank you. Yeah, this is me. This is
Yes.
Mahavir or Rishabh.
Yes. Okay. Any other questions for the whole presentation or anything about the conscience and matter that you want to talk right now? And then I'll be taking up the common and random questions for you. Raise your hand if anyone has any other question for the class. Okay, we are pretty much it. Perfect. Okay, let's start with our random questions now. Let me end this session of the Tattvartha Sutra first with a small Mangalacharan, just 2 lines, and then we will take up the common questions. So just join your hands. And today you have accomplished a big task because you have completed one huge chapter of a big shastra, a big scripture. And that is very fortunate to be able to do that. So thank yourself for being present in all these classes and understanding such beautiful deeper concepts to enlighten your souls. So please be thankful to yourselves and be thankful to the Uma Swami Maharaj Ji. Okay, so just join your hands. मोक्षमार्गस्य नेतारं भेतारं कर्मभूभृतां ज्ञातारं विश्वतत्त्वानां वन्दे तद्गुणलब्धये. Okay, let's begin our question answer session. Who has question and answers? I'll take you in between. You can ask your questions one by one by yourself, or if you want me to pick up your hand, let me know and I'll call your name. Okay, raise your hands and let me start calling your names for random questions that you want me to answer with scientific Jain eyes. Okay, let's start with Vivan then. I don't see any hand raised here. And Vivan has a question. What's your question?
So in Bhaktamra Stotra, in one of the pictures, it shows that heavenly beings are putting things under the Muni Maharaj's feet. So what are those things called?
You have to tell me specifically, like what were the things they were putting there?
It was like this outlining thingy, and then
do you have a picture for me?
Yes.
Show me the picture. But otherwise, so let me tell you one thing. We know that there are 4 states, right? There is a heavenly state, there's a hellish state, there's a human state, and then there is a Tyrian state, which comprises of all the insect world, amphibians, animal world, aquatics, every single thing is included in the Tyrian beings. Even microorganisms, everything is included in the Tyrian beings. So it is only the human beings and the Tyrian beings who are 5 sensed with man. They have the ability to do some tap and upvas. Okay, not even they, heavenly beings can do tap and upvas, not even hellish beings can do tap and upvas. It is only us who has the ability. That's how the structure is. Only us as human beings have the ability to do it. You know what? When you go to the heaven, suppose you die and you go to the heaven, even though you have done so many upvas here, right? And then you go to heaven and you feel like that you want to do more upvas, but you cannot do it.
Why?
That's what the structure of the heavenly and the hellish states are. It is known as states which are there to experience what you have done. Like if you have done bad deeds, then you have to face what you have done. So you have to go to the hellish state and you have to experience, there is no exception to it. You have to experience constantly the pain that you have created for others or yourself. Similarly with the heavenly beings, when you go to heaven, you have to face the happiness or the pleasure of your good things. Okay, and there's no exception to it. So that's why, but it's only in the human form and some of the Tyrian forms that you can actually do upvas, vrat, and it is only at that time when you do upvas and vrat, the heavenly beings actually come down and you know what, bow down to you. Why? Because in that moment, the heavenly beings, you become much higher status than the heavenly beings, because even heavenly beings realize that they cannot do tap and upvas, you can do it. So right? So when you do it, they feel so much high of pleasure, to see you doing it, because that's what they always want to do. So they come and they bow down to you. That's when, in I don't know the picture what you're talking about, but what I'm telling you is that could be a possibility, that the heavenly beings are there to pray that human soul who has turned into a Tirthankar,
No,
and they are actually praying and bowing down to him because of his greatness he has achieved by disintegrating his karmic particles inside his body. So that's what scientific is. Hold on, we'll continue in the next session. Okay, we have another question here from Rishabh. Rishabh, ask your question.
So I was just wondering, because like science says that the soul doesn't exist, right? And then I just want to know, because like I'm kind of conflicted between whether fully believing that the soul exists or not, because I don't know, I just like proof for everything that I know. So I was just wondering if you could like kind of list out all the proofs that you have for the soul existing.
Okay, so do you know that scientists have recently come to an experiment where they have been able to see the fluctuation in one of their instruments as soon as the soul leaves the body? Do you know about that?
No.
Okay, so there have been experiments which have been constantly done on reading the consciousness. And I'll give you a few examples, but they have come very close to measuring a change in the frequency or vibration of the instrument through which they measure the presence or the absence of consciousness. But I have a basic question to you, because you have seen the whole presentation. You have to answer me on that question. So, so what was I going to tell you? We as human beings, okay, are made up of three bodies. So we have one body, which is the coarse body, like which has got blood in it, which is made out of bones, which is made out of pus, so many things inside this body. So this is the coarse physical body that we have. Inside this coarse physical body, we have one more body, and this body is known as karmic body. This body is known as karmic body. Okay. And this body is known as coarse physical body. So the karmic body is very, very, if you remember when I was taking the class, I told you that the karmas are like extremely minute matter particles, which cannot be seen with any instrument till now. As of now, no instrument has been created to actually see the karmic particles and how the karmas go and combine with the soul's essence and changes its modes. But there's one more body, and that body is known as Tejas body, and it is an electric body. So we call it an electric body. So these three bodies combine together and create our form, which is the human form. Okay, so the physical body everyone can see and read, but when we die, the physical body is left behind, right? It's just left behind. It's right there lying down on the table or wherever we die. It's left behind. But the karmic body and the electric body travels with the soul. It is so minutely binded to the soul that this doesn't get shed off. This travels with the soul into its next birth, and wherever it takes another form and goes into another physical body. So when actually these two forms leave the body and travel into another, that's the moment which scientists have tracked as some kind of fluctuation in there. And actually scientists have also found out that there is a very minimal mass that gets that's reflected, that the body has become less of that weight. For example, the body was about any body, right? Just imagine a small insect's body. Any body is like about 100 grams. And the moment it dies, then they have seen that it is minus 5 grams. There's a figure to it, 0.5 grams or 5 grams, something like that. There's maybe milligrams, but scientists have finally come to understand that there is something inside this body which left when this body died. So, but they're trying to relate that as consciousness. My question to you is, If you understand what I'm telling you here, tell me exactly which body is it that they are seeing as -5 grams.
So you said the karmic body is matter, so it will have to have weight as well.
Very nice. And also the electric body is also matter. And that's why both the bodies, when they leave, they are able to measure that very minimal amount of grams to be changed into the original body's weight. And but they are trying to understand and say that this is consciousness. But according to Jain scientists, it cannot be consciousness. Why? Because the consciousness doesn't have mass. It is a non-physical entity. It's only the matter bodies that have mass, and that's why they're able to detect that very minimal amount of mass which is leaving the body, but it is not the mass of the soul. It is the mass of the other two bodies which is leaving with the soul. So the soul cannot be detected no matter what, Rishabh, no matter what, how many instruments we design. A soul can be seen or understood only by and from a soul. No physical instrument, because all physical instruments are matter in nature. A matter instrument can never ever identify or read something which is non-physical or non-matter. A matter instrument cannot read a space. A matter instrument cannot read a time unit. A matter instrument cannot read the consciousness. It cannot. It cannot read the motion essential. It cannot read the. And yes, these are not physical entities. How can a physical entity measure a non-physical entity? Is it even logical and possible? The highest they can science can reach is to go to understand these karma particles. Maybe one day they design that super fine, extremely detailed instrument, and they're able to measure the electric body or the karmic body. Right now they're able to measure, but maybe they're able to see it with their instruments. Okay, but absolutely not possible for the soul, because it is consciousness, and it does not have the property of mass inside it.
Thank you. If I email you, can you send me some links to the studies that you are talking about so I can go into it and.
Absolutely. I have read these. Actually, there was a scientific sangoshti, also known as like scientific seminars, which were held together. And that's how I came to understand that many such experiments have been done. And I think if you go on Google, you might also find the same things. But absolutely, I will do that. You have my email address and you have my cell number also. Text me. Yes. What's the next question?
This one.
Okay, do you want to read that? Question from Arushi.
Does Jain science think that there are other beings somewhere in the universe?
Okay, nice question, Arushi. Well, are you talking about the universe in entirety? Then yes, but if you're talking about the Earth planet, it's a different story. Okay, so according to Jain science, there's another world exactly like us. Like how we are talking, how we are doing things, we are managing through cars, our transportations, we are managing to through our speech, our languages. There is exactly another world. Like our world is the Bharat Kshetra. Then there is exactly one world, which is Airava Kshetra, which is having exactly same kind of structure as ours. And then there is not just one Bharat in the entire universe. There are like 5 Bharat in the entire universe. There are like 5 kind of worlds. Like the world that we live in, there are 5 more kind of those worlds. And with our type of living beings, with 5 senses, man, speaking, languages, talking, the way we are working now, the way we are living now, exactly same lifestyle, similar kind of lifestyle. So that is happening parallel in almost like 5 Bharat 5 more worlds, and then 5 Airavat 5 more worlds. So it's like almost like 10 places such things are happening. Does that answer you? Arushi, I don't see your face. Do you want to just focus on yourself from the camera? Do you get it? Give me a thumbs up, or you have another question on it.
Um, you said there are 5 other worlds exactly like us, but science says they have found no other living beings in space with
Beta, science never says there is no other world. Science is discovering.
yeah,
Science has not yet designed instruments that it can go and, you know what, even that this that man has reached the moon is still a controversy. Do you know that? man has reached any other planet is still a controversy. There are many such things that we don't really know. So it is from just a perspective of engaging ourselves that some kind of research is being done in the universe and in the space that we call as space today, out in the exteriors, and they're just trying to allure us. So there are many such controversies happening today. You have to go deeper, that the science has very limited instruments to see. They don't really yet know the shape of the earth. Do you know that? They still don't know. How did they came to understand the shape of the earth? They have 5 different cameras, and they combined the cameras, and they made a hypothesis that the earth is in such and such format. It's all a hypothesis. It's all theories out there. Nothing has been confirmed 100%. So science is constantly in a phase of discovering itself. One day it may discover some things which are beyond our understanding today. We have entered into the 21st century now, right? There will be a lot of progress where science will be able to come closer to understanding many things. But it's still far behind, far behind. It has not even explored our earth completely yet. It doesn't even know what creatures are inside the earth yet. Can you believe that? It's not even come closer to that. And now it's talking about things which are beyond earth. Imagine, is it even sufficient enough to do that? Yet? Not yet. Okay.
Question?
Yes.
So from Sunidhi, it says, if someone is in outer space and that person is a Jain, how will the food work because they can't eat at night and it's always night in space? Did you hear that?
Yes, that is absolutely possible. For example,
No, but like if someone is in outer space and that person is a Jain and they can't eat at night, how will the person eat because it's always night in space?
so, Sunidhi, do you know that not eating at night or actually taking food just in the daytime is an attribute of a Jain? A Jain doesn't do that. Why? Understand that this from a perspective. They don't do that because of the presence of microorganisms, huge amount of reproduction that takes place after the sunset, and then there is no oxygen, there is more carbon dioxide produced, and that carbon dioxide actually becomes a environment for more and more microorganisms to exist. And not just microorganisms, even 2 cents, 3 cents, 4 cents, 5 cents beings get generated in that kind of environment. And that's the reason we avoid eating at night, right? That's number one concept. Now, there are 12 pratimas of Jain. So it is, I think, a certain number of pratima of Jain, which is like 12 steps. I think third, fourth, or fifth, one of these steps has got the actually ultimate niyam when you take it, that no matter what, I will never ever eat at night, right? When you take that pratima, and it's a step procedure, pass the first step, second step, third step, fourth step, then come to the step where you're not eating at night. At that moment, you have already left your traveling. That means that in one of the pratimas, you already restrict your traveling. You don't go beyond a certain area. You remain within inside a particular city. You don't travel much. So if you don't travel much as per those pratimas, and finally you go to the pratima or the vow of not eating at night, that's why these procedures have been completely set. So a person who has taken this pratima or the vow of not eating at night would not be willing to go in the space. Do you get that? I need a thumbs up. I need to understand if you get my answers or not.
Next question.
Okay, next question, please.
In Jain geography, they say that the sun and other stars revolve around Mount Meru. What is your belief on this topic?
Okay, listen, don't worry about my belief, because my belief would be very much personal. Every single belief is personal. But when it comes to Jain science, it is just a fact. It is a scientific fact. That's it. And for you to have complete faith in that scientific fact, you have to go into more depth with these scriptures, which are written with completeness, exactly how the sun functions, how the moon functions, exactly where is Mount Meru, how does these attributes work. So yes, that is true. According to Jain science, there are two suns and two moons, and all four of them rotate, revolve around the Mount Sumeru. And till now, science has not even come close to that concept. So as per from these scientific instruments or scientists things, we have no answer yet for this kind of thing. But because we have relativity, like when we are on earth, we see the sun, right? So we can either make one of the two objects stationary. So again, this is in the theory. So science today is totally relative science from our perspective, but Jain science is not a relative science. Jain science is from the perspective of the entirety, because it is known from the omniscient, from the consciousness itself, who has discovered the existence of the universe the way it is. That's where the Jain science is coming from. It's not coming from our limited eyes, limited hearing, or limited instruments. It's coming from a much grander place than you can even imagine. So Jain science has very different concept regarding the sun, moon, even the shape of the earth, or our like Jambudi, the center of the whole universe, how it is. It's like in the form of like a flat plate. And you know what? I think there was a scientist and his name was Subramaniam or someone. I was like very young, probably I was 15 years old, 14, 15 years old when I had heard about him, that he had projected this idea that earth is not round, that earth itself is flat like a disc. And he had proved it with the help of amazing mathematical calculations. But his whole discovery was denied because all the calculations which were done by scientists from about the mass, about the motion, about the light, about every single thing would fail in that perspective. And that's why that theory was never given justified attempt. We still don't know what's really the real thing from the science perspective, but science is discovering. That's the answer for this. Do you get this, Rishabh?
Can I answer?
Okay,
Yeah.
anyone has any more science questions?
Yeah, I kind of.
I have one more question. Okay.
Okay, please go ahead.
When you said that atoms they bond because of their smoothness or roughness degree,
Yes.
does that basically mean like they're positive or negative charge? Like I think you said this or something, but I don't exactly remember.
Yes, that's what I said, that probably we can understand the dryness and the roughness as the plus and the minus charges on these elements and atoms. Yes.
But some of the atoms they bond together, and it's not because of their positive or negative charge. They bond because they have like a certain amount of electrons in an outer shell, and then
But
another
beta
atom.
electron has a charge on it.
But like two neutral atoms can bond even if they don't. They can have a neutral charge, but they bond. There's like some science behind it, so
Do
they
you
don't
know
need to.
which of these elements are? Do you know that?
Yeah. So hydrogen, right? So a regular hydrogen atom
Mm-hmm.
has with no charge, no positive, no negative charge, has one proton in the nucleus and one
Yes.
electron in the outside.
Yes.
And an oxygen atom would have 6 electrons,
Yes.
right? And then
Okay, so beta, I think you got a little bit confused here. So when we are talking about the dryness and the the dryness and the roughness, sorry, the roughness and the smoothness, it is these little charges which the electrons, neutrons, these are holding in within themselves. How come the hydrogen is stable? Because of the presence of the electron, the positive and the negative together, making it stable right there, right?
mhm,
it
yeah.
is it is stable by itself. It's not an unstable compound, right, or a element or an atom, right? It is stable, and it is stable because of those charges making it. But we think it is neutral because though both the charges neutralize out, and then finally the hydrogen exists as an hydrogen atom. But what is the virtue that the hydrogen combines with the oxygen? It's like it's an H2O, right? It's two hydrogens combining with one molecule of oxygen. That's what happens. And that combination happens not without the property of roughness and smoothness. So we are limited in our terminology actually to use it as charges like plus and minus charges on them, but there is much deeper thing to this. Again, back to the same thing, that right now, because science uses only these things like as charges, so we are limited in using those terms right now to explain the roughness and the smoothness.
Okay, so what you're saying is that Jane, science has like different terms for the things that science has, and
Yes.
science will like continue to discover and like match it up with those terms.
Yes. For example, like I told you about the atom, like the atom's real word, which came from Jain scientists, is Anu. So Anu, it was the original word which was taken up by the modern scientists, and they converted the word Anu into atom. So the word itself originated from Anu, and then it was converted into an atom, but it was misread, because according to the whole philosophy, the Anu is the smallest and the minutest particle, and it is indivisible. But at that time, when the scientists found that this is the atom, they defined it that it is an indivisible particle of the world, and that's why we're going to call it Anu or an atom. Later on, they had instruments which were much more finer, and they were able to see that this atom can even be split. And now they were in a fix, because they called it an atom. Now they have to use different terms to call the smallest particle some other name. So do you see where I'm going?
Yeah, that science will continue to like evolve and
Yeah.
change.
Science is discovering itself constantly, but it is a wrong usage of the term they used for that. Similarly, maybe it is our wrong usage that we are limited with the charges like the plus and minus charges to describe the smoothness and roughness. Maybe it's not really those.
Okay, and also at least in school, what they told me was that the term atom, it comes from the Greek term atomos or something like that. So they said it was from the Greek thing, but like anu also sounds kind of similar to atom.
You
So
know, where did
maybe
the Greeks come from? Do you know the science? Where did the science entered into Greek mythology? Do you know the story?
no. I mean, I know like Europeans and Indians are related because like Aryans and stuff, but like I don't know how they like.
Story is very different. There is one Muni Maharaj, and his name is Kalyan Muni. This Kalyan Muni was taken by the Alexander the Great, and he was transported to what was the name? Babylon. What was the main destination before entering into the Greece? Yes, and the whole science that they have in the Greek mythology actually originates from the Jain science. They have our biggest scriptures, the Greeks and the Germans. Most of our most important scriptures of science have been restored in Germany, and it has been talked about in the Greek mythology also, in the Greeks way of understanding the science by Aristotle, and what was the other name who came after Aristotle? You know what? Like there's Socrates. Yes. So what happened is there's like one clear sentence which was said by Alexander the Great to Kalyan Muni, and he said that Kalyan Muni, your teachings are very interesting, and your concepts about karmas is very different. I have never heard about it. And then he tells him that my guru, and he writes down the name Aristotle in Aristotle, and no, Socrates was the guru of Aristotle. So he speaks that one sentence right there and says that my guru Aristotle would be very, very interested in meeting you, because we have never heard of these concepts. And there's that one sentence, and that was the reason why he requested Acharya that please can I take Kalyan Muni to my country, to my place, to my continent. And because Muni Maharaj Ji doesn't travel that time, it was made as an exception, because Kalyan Muni did Nivedan to the Acharya and said that I will be able to expand the Jain religion and its science towards many other dimensions. Would I be allowed to go? Then Acharya said, you do a prashchit after reaching to the other land, but please move ahead. And then, but everyone knows that on his way back, Alexander died, right? But then he, before dying, he wrote for has meant that everyone has to take care of Kalyan Muni with the utmost respect and has to give him the highest status while living into his country and continent. So there are amazing stories which are about our heritage that is missing out from its main content long time.
Thank you. Yeah,
Okay.
that's an interesting story.
Okay, we have a question from Sunidhi. Can an animal have the capacity to take Newman like this, Niyam like this? Yes, animals have the capacity to take Niyams like this. I'll tell you a very interesting story. So my guru, Kshama Sagarji Maharaj, when he was very young, he told me, he told us the story that he had a pet, a cow pet, and this cow pet had taken a niyam. And she had taken a, she was like in the fifth level of consciousness, you know, she had taken a niyam, certain niyams. And how did they discover it? So what happened is like, there's like one huge big open pot with water inside it. And if by chance anyone even dip their finger into that water pot, this cow will not drink the water from that place. And then they came to know that this cow has the niyam and she's not going to drink from it. So yes, all the animals can take. Haven't you heard about the salekna of elephant? Very famous story. Go to Google and check that one out. Actually, an elephant took a salekna and it dropped out because it suddenly realized that its time is coming to an end, and it realized its previous births, why it was what caused him to take this birth. That is what, like, I'm assuming happened within his mind. But he actually started leaving every single thing, and slowly he dropped everything till the last point. He knew his death, and he died with salekna, with complete peace and austerity. And there are many such stories. If you have heard about Mahavir Bhagwan, his previous birth was an lion, right? So by the end of the time, this lion also takes the lekna and leaves and drops everything slowly, and then finally turns into a Dev Paryay after that because of dropping everything and taking Salekna in the proper procedure. Yes, most of these animals and all the animals who have five senses and man like us have the ability to take the niyams and Salekna too. Okay, Anusha has a question. Okay, quickly, let's take that one. What time is it? We have about 5 more minutes to go.
Can I take up all my questions?
Go one, and let me take others.
Okay. So the first one is, do Munis do kalash?
You have more questions, which is more scientific, and I can explain you that later on.
Okay. Why does oil and water never mix?
Next.
Um,
Okay, I think Anusha is coming from a very different standpoint here. Anyone has any other questions? Are we good to go now? I'm still open, 5 more minutes. Any more questions from you? Meanwhile, you are thinking, I'll take up one question. So someone asked me that as per science, they say that it's very important for us to sleep 8 to 10 hours. And what does Jain science has its own perspective towards this? And so the answer to that is, well, the sleep itself is actually a state of stress. When we are stressed a lot, what happens is we require a lot more sleep. We even sleep in the daytime at that time. So the sleep is actually, according to Gen Science, related with stress. How much stressed are you? And imagine if you start meditating and you really start doing tap and meditations and remaining quiet, you're not that much stressed. So at that time, you sleep less. So there is scientific data which speaks that people who are meditators, they sleep just 2 hours a day. And that very much justifies what Jain scientists are talking about. Jain acharyas say that you do not require any sleep. Okay, you do not require. The sleep itself is an unconscious state. So when we are told to stay constantly alert and take care of our karmas, do you think acharyas would ever say that go and sleep? No, because even while we are sleeping, our subconscious mind is active and it is still creating and attracting so much karmas towards us, right? And it is all unconscious actions in the sleep. They would never ever tell us to be unconscious at any moment of time, whether in sleep or through our own trance states or our own unconscious, careless, or unalert state. They would never say that. So, according to Jainism or Jain science, no, we don't have the concept of sleep. The sleep happens as a product of how much stressed we are, and that defines how much sleep you need in a day. And that's why the sleep has variations with people to people. Okay, Arushi has a question now.
Um, you just said if you're more stressed than you sleep, what happens then? What about the times when you can't sleep? You barely have like 1 or 2 hours of sleep. You technically stressed, but then you don't fall asleep or you don't take a nap during the day.
That's an overexertion state, beta. That is scientific process. What's happening when you are like overly excited about things, it shut down certain system in your body that it cannot relax. And since it's not able to relax, it's in a hyperactive state. You're still in a constant hyperactive state, and then your system does not shut down to even relax. That's what it is. It's like an extreme case of overexcitement. And that's also not a state of Jain way, because it leads towards binding of DKPs, which is Darshana Varniya Karma. So when you're not able to, you're overly excited, completely overly excited and engaged constantly into your beta state activities of the brain, that's also a state of Darshana Varniya Karma. And in the moments when you actually sleep in your uncommon times, for example, I came to know this when I was 20 years old. I came to know that if you sleep in the afternoon time or if you take naps in the afternoon, it leads to the attraction of DKPs. And since then I left it because I understood the science behind it. And so when you go up the mountain, come back, you feel so tired that you really want to sleep, take a nap. Small kids sleep a lot. Why do they sleep so much? They sleep so much because inside their body a lot of things are happening which is of a much higher rate and frequency than your own system. So that's why they sleep a lot, which means that their organs are still forming and maturing. So a lot of activities are happening inside their body, and that's why they sleep a lot. So the sleep is different for different things. How much, again, the level of stress inside and outside the body in your mental state or in your physical state, that defines your sleep. Get that? Perfect. Where can we find recorded lessons of Tattvartha Sutra? Parsha, you will find them from tomorrow, because today I'm going to put them all together into proper names to them, and I will post it. But how would you get it? Can you please text me? My number is, write down my number. My phone number is 917. I'm writing it here. 917-916-3442. So just send me a text message that you need the links to the Tattvartha Sutra session, and I will forward you the links. Okay, are we done for today? Any more questions we have? I'm just texting, writing the number here. Okay, perfect. So this is really nice. So I really urge all of you to, if you are all going to Paathshaala already, talk to your, let me just end this YouTube session.